What is going on, YouTube people? Neo Cards and Comics here for October gem rate data. One of our favorite videos to make each month, breaking down the gem rate data, seeing what all the grading companies did in the past month, talk about current pricing, what it might do, where it might go, all sorts of nonsense. This is always a fun video to make. So we have our October gem rate data in front of us. Let's go ahead and dive in. If you're not following gem rate on IG/Twitter and all the socials and checking out gemrate.com, like, what are you really doing with your life? Lots of good, interesting tools on gemrate.com, by the way. It's not just the monthly numbers that he posts. You can do some nice data deep dives on there with the tools that he has presented. Let's run down the numbers. PSA down slightly, but still well over, or not well over, but over 1 million cards. 3% to me isn't a big swing. That's like normal. You know, you're going to be up 1 month, a couple percent, down 1 month, a couple percent. Perfectly fine. Still over 1 million cards. Are they still working through the backlog? Maybe a little bit. I speculated more over a month ago that the backlog is basically done, other than some problem child orders. Very few people comment on videos. And in fact, if you do, does anyone still have cards at PSA from 2021? I asked this question a month ago, and pretty much everyone was like, no, outside of like 1 or 2 people. I think at this point, they are all into the national stuff. Not everybody, but a lot of people got their $18 national orders back yet. There's still some other stuff floating around out there. But if you have old PSA orders, as always, put them in the comments down below. It just kind of gives everyone a little bit of a gauge where things are sitting at. CSG/CGC had a huge month. I should recap with PSA. They changed prices once. They went to $18 a card. And then obviously just yesterday it went to $15 a card. So that $15 is not reflected in here. However, they did have $15 TCG for the month of October. Now, back to CSG/CGC. Huge month out of CSG and CGC. 50% increase overall. And as you can see, evenly distributed between CSG and CGC. Now, do keep in mind, CSG had a price reduction right at the beginning of the month. They dropped 20%. That made bulk $12. And there was 20% across the board. Everything else came down with it. That clearly gave them a boost. CGC, there was no discount on the CGC side. Their pricing stayed the same. I can tell you, at least from I have firsthand experience with CGC, they are cranking things pretty good. I sent Marvel bulk orders that were back to me in about 10, 14 days total. So they really do not have much of a backlog. What we are seeing, in my opinion, is like their true numbers. Only 36,000 sports cards out of CSG, 100,000 basically non-sport TCG out of CGC. The other thing to keep in mind here with CGC, and I don't know how many they've done, we'll find out in about a month or two. Marvel is still not on the CGC pop report for trading cards. That's supposed to be coming sometime later this year, first of next year. So you're still not seeing any Marvel cards on that CGC number. So in all honesty, that number is actually higher. We just don't know how much higher. It could be 1,000. It could be 5,000. I really don't know. SGC obviously had a price decrease. It finally went from $30 a card, dropped down to a banded price, if you will, depending on how many cards you're submitting. Essentially $18 to $22, I believe, is what it comes out to be. They did 81,000 cards, a 17% increase. Beckett also shuffled up some prices this month. They waited a little bit till later in the month to do it, and they also did the one thing and then, switched it up a little bit. They initially came out with $18 grading with no subgrades. Obviously heard community pushback on that, and within about a week, switched it to $22 with subgrades. Now, that was pretty late in the month, so to be fair to them, I don't know that we have a good idea in regards to what their numbers would look like with the new pricing, as it really hasn't been in effect super long to adjust to that. SGC, to be fair to them, announced theirs around that same time, in between Beckett's price jumps. So, theirs, they did see a little bit of an increase. We don't know if it's due to the pricing or not. We can only sit here and speculate. But those are the numbers for the month. November should be very telling. Can PSA crank 1 million out again? Are they getting enough cards to sustain 1 million a month? Obviously, they keep doing price increases. So they're either trying to bleed us, probably yes, and they are also trying to keep the machine fed. They need those cards coming through the door so they can process them and get them back out the other side. And they have the economies of scale to put downward pressure on the other grading companies just based solely on price point and steal some of their business, thus kind of almost choking them out, if you will. How much lower can they go? I think they could get to 10 or 12 for at least some stuff, maybe not all the time. I think they continue to do this special thing. The one lever that they have not pulled yet is playing around with pricing at the other tiers. Economy is still at what it's been at forever. Regular service is still at what it's been at forever. As the bulk pricing gets cheaper, that gap grows. I have to imagine at some point in time, they could start pulling those levers. Hey, okay, cool. We're going to drop economy by $5. Oh, awesome. Yay. Cool. Woohoo. Economy $5 cheaper. Yay. They could do the same thing with regular. They could also play with declared value. They could keep it at $15, but up the declared value to $300 a card if they wanted to. There's all sorts of little shenanigans and trickery and chicanery that PSA can pull out of their behind to kind of massage the numbers around, if you will, to potentially get more cards in the door without drastically shifting pricing here and there. So keep that in mind. CSG and CGC, they extended, at least on the CSG side, the price decrease till the end of the year. So that 20%, those prices will remain. Looking forward to November, it'll be interesting to see, does this gain hold? Do these gains that they made hold? They were the first to market for a price decrease. Then all the other grading companies decreased their pricing in the month of October. So we don't really know how that's hit them yet. GemRate tracks the weekly data, but I really just don't like looking at it week by week. And it's nothing against GemRate. I just prefer the larger sample size and just rather wait till the end of the month to get a better picture for it. But we are going to have a real good idea if, with their price decrease and now everyone else coming down, especially PSA is down to $15 a card now for bulk, $200 declared value, CSG's at $12 a card. That's pretty close. It's another $3 per card, and PSA obviously drastically outsells CSG. Faster turnaround time with CSG, so you get a little churn and burn potential there, but I feel like most people would lean PSA's way. PSA is, I should have noted, that cheapest price point is locked behind a Collectors Club Universe membership or a bulk submitter or something along those lines. CGC side of things, they have not done any pricing discounts. I wish they would, as someone that submits Marvel all the time. But I don't know that they need to. You know, they're doing $100,000 a month with their current pricing, so clearly that's fine. And that was with, you got to remember, a bulk of their business for CGC, and this is kind of something interesting to consider here. A bulk of CGC's business is TCG cards. In fact, all of it is, because once again, Marvel's not on there yet. And PSA ran a $15 special last month for TCG. And CGC had a nice increase on TCG. So that was going head to head with PSA having $15 pricing on CGC, or on TCG. Sorry, too many C's, too many G's. So that's kind of like an intriguing takeaway there when you kind of run through them and spinning that forward in November. What does that look like? Because now the PSA $15 price point on TCG is gone. It's back to $18, replaced with a sports card grading tier at $15 instead. SGC we'll get to for November, kind of spinning ahead as we work through these. We will get to see what the price reduction does for them head to head against two PSA price reductions in the span of 30 days, less than 30 days, really. They dropped theirs once where there was that, tomfoolery with who was announcing first, PSA or SGC, who was reacting to who. I do tend to believe SGC's stance on this, that theirs was planned, and PSA kind of pivoted at the last second to get theirs out the door, just based off of people I have talked to around industry, not with those individual companies. So what does their numbers look like as we move forward with the pricing getting even cheaper with PSA now, and some of the competition, CSG, cranking up with the 20% discount, keeping that going. Last but not least, Beckett. This will be a real big month to see where the community's at on Beckett. You're going to have their $22 with subgrades out there in the wild for the full month. Does that move the needle? You know, I'm giving them a little bit of a pass this month because that pricing kind of came out pretty late. So I don't know how much of an impact it had on these current numbers. And remember, you know, this is, and it makes total sense. This was what Peter said from SGC is that when, at least for them anyway, and I assume this applies down the board to all of them, when they tweak prices, it takes almost a week before they really kind of see how the community is feeling about it. Because, you know, they announce a pricing change. Okay, cool. You got to go get your cards all together, get them off to the post office. Then it takes a couple days to get to wherever they're going. You know, that takes almost a good 5 business days before you kind of really get a feel for what submissions look like. So Beckett right now is probably just starting to get a decent amount of cards if people are using or choosing to use it from their $22 submission. So very, very interesting month for Beckett. Very, very interesting month for PSA. Can PSA maintain 1 million cards per month? Does Beckett see a bounce with the $22 grading tier? I actually, for mid-end, like that weird tweener stuff, Beckett at $22 with subgrades, because they don't have a declared value limit. You're not going to get upcharged. There's, you know, if you start looking at the numbers, there's some niche cases there for stuff that falls in the middle. Also, if you think something's not 100% a PSA 10, you can sneak it off to Beckett and potentially get the BGS 9.5. Yes, BGS 9.5 is not going to sell as much as a PSA 10, but it'll still pull better than a PSA 9 will. SGC, obviously no declared value. CSG, no declared, they have declared value, no upcharges, I should state. Let's look at one other thing. I want to look at the split here. This is the sports card graded per month. So on the sports card side, you have PSA clearly way ahead at 716,000. SGC in second place in sports cards at 76K. And then CSG and Beckett very close together. You can see the percentage changes there on the right-hand column. Like I said, 7% is a little bit of a decent decrease. I almost consider anything 5% or under kind of negligible, just kind of like the month of normal business nonsense. However, an 18 and a 51 and a 26% swing are a different story. TCG, this is always the crazy one. PSA is doing 330,000 TCG cards a month. CGC is doing 99,000. Beckett's doing 20K, and SGC only 4,000. So Beckett really crushing SGC on the TCG side of things. And TCG for SGC, oh my goodness, these acronyms is really an area of opportunity for them in a big way. If they can make any inroads in that market, they basically have next to no market share in the TCG marketplace. CSG and PSA are just crushing them, and even BGS's number is a pretty good size ahead of that. I know people like to go Beckett for TCG because you can get black labels at a pretty decent clip. Nothing crazy, but a much better chance than a sports card. It just has to do with the way that the cards are manufactured. Those TCG cards come out of the pack much cleaner, and they could take a little bit of a beating more because of the material that they're made out of. They're designed to be shuffled and played even without sleeves. So they're kind of built to take, you know, a little bit of surface wear doesn't really affect them as much. Corners around it, they're more plasticky material in most cases. So it just grades a lot cleaner, a lot smoother. I know I had really good success pretty much just acing PSA 10s left and right from Marvel White Schwartz because it just grades super easy. They're just clean cards out of the pack. So those are the TCG numbers. And to the point from earlier, I want to flip over here to the gem rate by data. So this is not gem rate, the website, gem rate as in percentage of cards that gemmed. And remember, gem mint for these companies, PSA, that's a PSA 10, Beckett, that's a Beckett 9.5, SGC, that's a SGC 10, CSG, that is a CSG 10, and CGC, that is a CGC 9.5. It's very intriguing when you run across these. PSA, we're just going to focus on 2020 and newer, so ultra modern. PSA is coming in at a 55% gem rate on ultra modern. Beckett is coming in at a 68% gem rate. This goes back to what I was talking about earlier. If you have a card that's kind of a tweener, there's one little teeny tiny thing on it, and you're like, nope, that's not going to get a PSA 10. With the new Beckett pricing, it may make more sense to send it that way than getting stuck with the PSA 9 if you don't think it's super, super clean. Maybe squeak out the min gem. Maybe you even still get a min gem plus or a true gem. Who knows? But that's definitely an angle to work if you have a tweener card. Also, same thing with the declared value. SGC coming in at 36% on ultra modern. Keep in mind, we have talked about this before. It has been a while. SGC's gem rate percentage is always going to be a little bit lower because they have that 9.5 grade in their tool belt. PSA doesn't. So if something's in between, it's a split between whether it's going to get a 9 or a 10, basically. SGC, they have a 9.5, so if there's something they don't like about it, they could just hit it with the 9.5 for the near mint plus or mint plus or whatever I forget what they call the 9.5 grade. CSG, same thing. They're the toughest right now at 28% for a CSG 10. But they also have the 9.5 grade. The companies that have the 9.5 supporting the 10 gem mint, your gem rate tends to be a little bit lower because the graders have that option to knock it down to a 9.5 instead of saying, nah, I'm going to lean towards the 10 on this one. Instead of just saying, oh, no, this is a 9.5. CGC has a 9.5 as their primary grade. They have a 10 pristine, but a CGC 9.5 is the primary gem mint grade. And you can see they come in at a 58%. So them and Beckett, both with a 9.5 grading scale as the primary grade, seem to be a little bit easier to get a gem mint grade with those companies. So PSA and CGC are pretty close to each other at 55 versus 58%. So just some interesting numbers there. We don't look at those every single month when we break down the report, but I figured I would check in on them because I haven't talked about them for a while. Where do things go from here pricing wise? I think everyone sticks and stays now for a little bit anyway. I think everyone wants to kind of sit back, relax. I shouldn't say relax, not from a workflow standpoint, but just chill on the pricing stuff and see how this plays out for a couple weeks. You know, the snow globe has been shaken and shaken quite a bit. So I think they want to all kind of see how this settles. How much of an impact does the new PSA pricing have across the board? Does CSG hold submission levels with carrying over their discount to the end of the year? How does SGC submission levels go with their discounted pricing up against the other company's discounted pricing? What does Beckett see with the full influx of the $22 with subgrades, $18 without subgrades orders coming in the door? I think everyone's going to kind of take a breath for November and see what happens. Maybe even till the end of the year. I could see PSA or continuing to shake things up with these monthly specials, and maybe that's what they're going to do. When this runs out at the end of November, they'll roll out something different for the next monthly special. Bulk will go back to $18 and they'll come out with something different. Who knows? But as we talked about earlier, PSA has a lot of different levers they can pull to kind of play around with pricing because they're so, I don't want to say strict on declared value, but because they have that upcharge hanging over your head, it kind of forces people to submit differently with them. And they can play with that a little bit. That's, once again, another little tool in their tool belt that they can tweak to kind of swing these prices around a little bit to potentially get more cards in the building. Thoughts, comments, questions, leave them in the comments down below. If you're not, make sure you go follow GemRate on the various social platforms. We will catch you guys and girls on the next one. Peace.